And that moves us into segment number 4, in which we will be covering for the first time, but not the last time, the R&B soul artist Al Green. So before we get going, let's do 2 things. Number 1, Matt, why don't you run down the numbers for Mr. Green?
Okay, so Al Green comes in at number 306 in Rolling Stone's top 500 list. In Best Ever Albums, it's 527 in the 1970s, 51 in 1972, and 2,850 of all time.
And I should mention that we're doing I'm Still in Love with You, since Al Green released about 47 albums in about 6 years, I feel like, in the 70s.
Sorry, John. I was talking about all of Al Green's albums. They're all in one ranking is what just happened. So yeah.
Gotcha. No, I dropped the ball in terms of doing that. So that's the album. We have the numbers right there. Before we get into it, guys, how familiar were you with Al Green going into this?
Just the hits, I think. I don't really know even much about him.
Pulp Fiction. Okay. He was in the scene in Pulp Fiction. Let's Get Together. That's how I first heard him, and I knew he was called. I know that he's the Reverend, right? I don't know if he's an actual Reverend, but that they call him the Reverend, and that's about it.
He's in a sweet ass white suit on the cover of this album too.
Yeah,
with black socks.
I kind of get him and Marvin Gaye confused, I think, in my head sometimes, even though they don't really sound too the same.
They are contemporaries, but there are big differences. But we haven't got to Marvin Gaye yet, so that'll be an interesting comparison piece. Well, let me start the 15-minute clock, guys. I think it is time for Josh to start us off with his hot take first. The clock has begun. Josh, initial thoughts.
This album gave me love and happiness. It is fantastic. I can't wait to listen to more Al Green. There's a strong theme of love and throughout the entire album. He's got a smooth, soulful voice, which is definitely part of the appeal. I would say this is good baby making music if you need some recommendations. And it was a pleasure to listen to all these songs that I hadn't heard before. Some of them sounded very familiar to me, but I couldn't place them. So maybe I've heard them in the ether or from various
Pretty Woman, occasionally gets played by different people. So yeah.
Yes, I knew that cover, it's a nice, sexy cover by Al Green. He's definitely he knows his strengths when he's singing. Where does this and we didn't do any research, obviously. Where does this rank in his kind of output? Is he established at this point? Is he new? Is this kind of?
I think I think he's relatively new. If I'm just scanning Best Ever Albums here, 71 is the earliest, or he's got a record in 69.
Okay.
I think he had 2 famous ones in 72 and then a famous one around 73 or 74, if I remember correctly.
It's weird how these, I'm sure this is not the case, but for somebody as famous as Al Green, this is the first time we're listening to him. You would think that there would be some kind of run up to an introduction by him, like, is he kicking around in the late 60s doing stuff like background, like some of the other artists that we've discussed? You can't just like pop up fully formed. I mean, you rarely. Yeah,
it's his fifth studio album, actually.
Okay, gotcha. So
although Bill Withers did pop up pretty much fully formed, so it isn't impossible, right?
Right.
In the other segment, yeah.
But I think Al Green is more recognizable, I would say, than Bill Withers. I think more people Joe on the street would know who Al Green is versus Bill Withers, maybe. So back to the album, I just thought that they used a great use of background singers in this voice, especially with Love and Happiness. Great production overall. I love the use of horns throughout the album, and it's not too sparse in terms of instrumentation, but I would say his voice is front and center, and everything complements him perfectly. This is a great album to listen to, and I will listen to it again.
Okay, Matt, initial thoughts?
So I have a mixed review of this. I think part of the issue might be the time that I listened to it. I don't know if it was, just was in the right headspace. I like the begin. I think I like the first half better. I do like his voice is great, and he does this. it's like a powerful voice that's also like held back. It's kind of like this restrained voice. He's not a belter, but it's still a powerful, really crisp, great falsetto that he's got. And he's feeling it, when he's singing this. He is putting his all into it, but he's not going over the top with really anything. I like the production. I think that it was mixed really well. I like the drumming, and I like the more upbeat songs, the funkier, more upbeat songs better than the more ballady type songs. And I found those to be more featured in the first half of the record. Songs like I'm Glad You're Mine. I really like the drumming in that. There were some really cool drumming parts there. He does this like weird offbeat thing where he takes a pause, like he kind of teases you, and then he comes in with this offbeat, the drummer there. So I did like that. Love and Happiness was another kind of like funky bass, part going on. Found a groove like this staccato, very like tight groove, and kind of hung with it for a little bit, which I did like. Kind of wish Bill Withers did that a little bit more in the album that we listened to already. But the second half of the album, it's still good, but I just wasn't. It was more just there for me, and I think that maybe if I was in a different headspace, I don't know. I listened to it earlier today, and I was kind of a little tired, and I was just laying down, and it's kind of like I dozed a little bit, so it wasn't a great listen, I would say. I think the guy's super talented. You can absolutely tell that, and it's a smooth, very smooth, soulful type record. I just like the more upbeat stuff more with one listen, and that might change with more listens. Again, I don't know a ton of. I knew the only song I knew on here was Pretty Woman, and I didn't know his version of it. I just knew obviously it's a famous song. Right. So maybe this is something that I generally like. And it's not a genre that I typically listen to, so it might be something I need to listen to more. But on one listen, yeah, it was fine. It was good. The first half I really liked. Second half was more okay. So a little mixed for me.
Yeah, I do listen to this genre a lot, Matt, and I kind of am with you. I'm mixed on this. Matt, Josh described it as baby making music. I don't really think of it as baby making music. Like it's about love for sure. But it's about like the concept of being in love. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't say it's love and sex. With Simply Beautiful, which I feel like has been sampled a bajillion times, just from different R&B and hip hop that I know. I remember like Mary J. Blige, that No More Drama album. There was a song that had that sampled on it. I want to say Kanye might have sampled it as well. It's like I've heard it 1,000 times. It's basically just like a series of sounds, him sort of humming and, just groaning and moaning to different stuff. So it's an interesting song right in the middle of the album. I am familiar with a couple songs on this album. Love and Happiness, for sure. That one's a staple. So I knew that one. Obviously, Pretty Woman is a cover. I didn't know how I recognized it, but I recognized For the Good Times. And I'm pretty sure that's a cover. So I was curious to see. I did break the rules to see if I was right, and I was. It's a Chris Christopherson song. And it's, and so, so
guy,
that
he's
one.
Everywhere.
He really is.
He's songwriter, and found all kinds of artists too. Chris Christopherson. We're going to talk about him quite a bit. I know I'm Still in Love with You, the opening track as well. That's another staple. But there was nothing offensive about this album, but for me, and we've talked about this before, R&B and soul is about how I feel when I listen to it. And a lot of other musics are not, but that's what the vibe is for me in R&B and soul. There's an intangible quality that I don't even know if I can truly speak to of, the artists that do speak to me and the artists that I enjoy, but they don't get me to that other level. Bill Withers got me most of the way there. In earlier stuff, Otis Redding for sure got me there. Nina Simone, definitely got me there. Etta James, But in terms of this, it was sort of more perfunctory, solid, but I didn't get over the hump is the first way to describe it. Now, I will say that it's arranged very well. It's arranged to be a pleasant album with horns and strings and even a fair amount of like like as Matt said, drums and bass. I don't know if I'd go so far as Matt is to say I love the drums, but the drums were a nice compliment at different times. There's a lot of background vocals on this as well, and different background vocals, not like in a traditional R&B, 4-piece where the lead singer and then there's maybe 3 behind or 2 behind. There's different voices, female and male. So in that, it's kind of like funk, where you have these different people singing in. But yeah, I would just say, and I was happy that Josh enjoyed it, and I know Matt, this is this genre is still like a work in progress for you. I think I was surprised I didn't like it more than I did, but there was nothing like "Let's Stick Together" on this album, which does transcend that. There's a lot of songs that have the same idea here, but I don't know. Even knowing "Love and Happiness" and "I'm Still in Love with You," those were never like go-to songs for me in the 70s. Now I know we'll do multiple Al Green albums, so perhaps I'll grow into what he's doing, or he'll put spins on it. But you'd mentioned Marvin Gaye, and I mean, I don't want to spoil, but I mean, I do not believe I will feel that way about Marvin Gaye. Having listened to his catalog many times, he transcends that to me. Yeah, and maybe it's just a difference between being the Reverend, right, and being, sexy soul, and that maybe that's what it is. There's just not that added, sex appeal to it.
Johnny's less God and more, more sex.
More debauchery.
I need both. I love Aretha plenty, and there's plenty of God in there.
She's got lots of God.
I was grooving to this album. I'm surprised you guys didn't respond to it more.
I was in parts. It just by the second song, or the second side, it was kind of For the Good Times. I think that's the longest. That's another 6+ minute song, and I felt that's the song for me that was too long. That was just kind of. It's not. I don't want to say boring, but I definitely was. I wanted it to do a little bit more, or just do what it did in a shorter period of time. And it's actually interesting too, John. There was a couple of songs on here. I think right off the bat, I'm still in love with you. It kind of starts off with this part that almost made me think, this sounds like let's stay together, there's a kind of the intro to that song, and there was another time where I felt that way as well. I forget exactly where, but there is it's a very similar sounding type song. But yeah, it's good, it's fine. Like I said, maybe I need to listen to it more, but it wasn't like, oh god, this is great, it's a little bit more there for me.
And to me, a great R&B album is not one you have to listen to multiple times.
Yeah,
it's either there, it's not, and it's. I
it's
think
not a prog album.
It gets the ultimate backhanded compliment from me. It's a completely inoffensive album. So there's no knocks on it, but when I say inoffensive, it's like it didn't give me more than the basics. You know what I mean?
That is kind of a knock, though, right? I mean, that is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's the ultimate backhanded compliment. Yeah. So.
Well, maybe this is just not his best album. You'll respond to something else that he
it's actually more. It's ranked it's his third highest ranked album on best ever albums, and I think the other two we are going to cover these are all going to be cold listen hot takes, because his highest ranked album is Call Me. It's number 270 in the 1970s, so he didn't even make it close to the regular
and I am familiar with that song, and I do like that song better than anything on this album, so I'm hoping that we can.
Did Blondie cover that?
No.
That's what I think. I think of the Blondie song.
Blondie is an original. Call Me's original song.
And then Let's Stay Together is the second highest ranked album. I believe we're covering both of those, right, John? And maybe
I know for a fact we're covering Call Me. I don't know about Let's Stay Together. I'm not having us do greatest hits for cold listen hot takes. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So
because we're going to be covering the same songs probably, like for some of this stuff.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So. Yeah, but that's where I stand. It's worth a listen if you like soul. I absolutely could see people liking this, and there's not a lot of bad songs on this as well.
No.
But it's from a lyrical perspective, it's about love and how great love is. It's not even about love gone wrong or love in the carnal sense or love and lost or I don't know what love is. It's just love, and love is awesome. Which is a great sentiment.
He's a happy guy. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great sentiment. It's a great sentiment, but it does not lend itself to edge when that is the sentiment. You know what I mean? And I will say, and my bias is that I do like a little edge. If you're gonna write I love songs and it's a 9-song album, I kind of only want 5 or 6 I love songs, and then I need a little bit more.
John's what I call a soul edgelord.
Yes, the edgelord. Yeah, so maybe that'll be my new nickname.
I mean, from a broader view, Al Green would be considered, I think, an essential soul artist if you were exploring the genre.
Yeah.
So that's a good reason.
I mean,
to
I had
listen to
heard of
some
him, so there's that.
Was he a reverend?
That's
the
what I
whole
was just going to
time?
ask. Was he an actual reverend?
I
Or
don't
that's
know.
just a nickname? Because Reverend Ron, he's a real reverend.
Is it?
The thing I remember is that he did gospel and had like both a gospel. So I don't want to go too much but I know he had like a gospel career while this career, I believe, was going on as well. If that makes sense, you know what I'm saying? So he, I don't know though if it was like this stage of his career or if it was later in his career. But I know that there was a period of time where he had both a mainstream career and a gospel carear.
Okay.
I
think
hot
it might have
fact
been
checks.
later. Well, I'm trying to pull it up now so I can see. So it says early success, and most of the stuff they're mentioning is that, and then gospel recordings comes around 1979. He injured himself falling off a stage in Cincinnati and took this as a message from God. So he concentrated his energy towards pastoring his church and gospel music. So he was already pastoring a church by 79.
That counts.
So
I
so
think.
and
It's a
in
real deal.
1970, it says in 1977, 2 years before this, his career record sales started to plummet a little bit due to some personal issues and his desire to become a minister. So I'm guessing between 77 and 79 is when Jesus in terms
he
of
had an
being a
awakening
minister
of
comes
some
into his
sort.
life. Yes.
Yeah. Got it.
Like
Yeah.
Cat Stevens.
Yeah.
They're
Or
similar,
Mace.
you know what I'm saying? Around the same time, Steve. Yeah, or Mace.
Or MC Hammer, right? Didn't that? Yeah, none of them had
Yeah.
a career after that. You go once.
You know, it is funny because it's very few white artists have a religious awakening, but
Yeah,
like
sure.
it is. Yeah, it's,
I mean, Bob Dylan became a born again, but he was never a
He did.
reverend or anything.
Right, I was gonna say when
then
they
he-
have their religious, it's definitely not like I'm gonna become a pastor. You
And,
know what
and
I
then
mean?
he
Like,
stopped, and then he was like, "I'm not selling any records. I need to stop this."
yeah, the Jesus folks on like the band side of thing, they either present fully formed like Creed and stuff, or they, or they get it, but it's kind of like something in the background, or like
Well, there's
it's after an
Stryper, right?
addiction.
Are we ever going to
Yeah.
cover Stryper? They
Yeah.
always had
There are
Bible
10,000
verses in
on
there.
Best Ever Albums.
Something like that, yeah. So, okay, well, I think that's about the end of the 15 minutes as well. So, Josh's definite thumbs up for that. Matt and I might be a little bit more thumbs in the middle. Is that a fair assessment, Matt?
I'd say so.
Gotcha. Okay, so that is the end of Al Green. I'm Still in Love with You, excuse me. Oh, I almost gave the wrong album right there. Sorry about that, guys.